So good afternoon, everybody. I found a mic that works here. So thank you all for coming.
All right, we need that silent hush to come back. Good afternoon.
There we go. Nice to see you all. So many people here already for our second annual conference on emerging school models with a subtitle this year, Moving from Alternative to Mainstream. So I am Paul Peterson. I'm the director of the program on education policy and governance here at the Harvard Kennedy School. And I am very excited to see you all here and to prepare myself for this fascinating set of presentations that I know are in prospect. So many of us who attended the conference last year wondered whether or not alternative approaches to education was just going to be a pandemic day, and after that it was going to disappear. But all the data that's coming in suggests that this is here to stay. We see enrollments down at our district schools. We see chronic absenteeism at our district schools. We see a lot of concern about bullying. We see a lot of concern about safety. And we see increasing demand for alternatives, whether it's at charter schools or private schools, or especially homeschooling, which really seems to have doubled from 3% to 6% over the last, for the last 4 or 5 years. And a remarkable change. You don't see that kind of a change in any sector of that magnitude. Now, whether that's going to persist, we don't know yet for sure, but certainly it doesn't seem to be quickly. And judging from the enthusiasm that's been expressed in preparation for this conference, I think all the signs are very much that something is here, something in the long run is happening out there. So in the upcoming sessions, we're going to hear from a lot of people, a lot of different voices. We're going to hear from entrepreneurs, leaders on the ground, policy experts. And we want to have a variety of views, and we want to hear your views. So we're going to leave time for you to pose your own questions, and we're going to provide you with microphones so that your voice can be heard. So we're going to have a keynote this evening. Those of you who have indicated that you plan to come to the dinner and are so recorded are welcome to attend. If everybody who said they would like to come does in fact come, we're going to be, hard pressed to let additional people in. If in fact that's not the case, you never know exactly what people decide to do in the end. We can see whether or not there's any opportunities beyond those who made it clear to us that they were going to be attending the dinner tonight. And we are very honored that at the dinner this evening, we'll have a keynote address given by Governor Kevin Stitt from the state of Oklahoma, who has been a leader in the school choice movement, particularly in the last couple of years. And tomorrow morning, we're going to have Florida's Education Commissioner, Manny Diaz, as the keynote speaker to kick off the morning session. And I know you'll all want to be here to hear what is happening in Florida, as that's certainly a leading state in this space. I have to thank, well, I don't have to, but I really desperately want to thank the people who have helped quietly help make everything a success. Antonio Wentland, where is he? There he is, who is everywhere, and Michael Poor, who's up here, and Nick Tavares, our technician. Nick, are you here? He's busy doing his technical job. Okay. So, and then of course, thanks especially to Daniel Hamlin, the co-moderator of the conference with me, who has played a major role in helping identify who the major players are and has given a lot of direction to what's going to be going forward here. He was a postdoctoral fellow here at our program. at Harvard some years ago. I won't say how many years ago because, he's actually, filling out a little bit. But he's now a professor at the University of Oklahoma, and it's just a delight to have Daniel again with us today. So thank you very much, Daniel, and I'll turn it over to you.
I was really thin when I was here, so filling out is a positive thing in this case. Yeah, good afternoon. I just want to say Paul pretty much has covered everything, but it's a thrill to be here. It's a thrill really to see so many faces here this year. I think compared with last year, we've tripled our registrations. I think both in person and online, we have about 1,000 people who have signed up to attend this event. I see a lot of people around the room who attended also last year, so I think that's a great sign as well. So I think this is going to be great. One thing we've done this year, so a quick note on how we've organized the sessions. We've made them interactive. So we've carved out about half the time in each session to hear from you. So panelists, each one of them will have about 8 to 10 minutes to give their opening remarks. Then Paul and I will ask a couple of questions of our own, just maybe 2. And then the rest of the time will be allotted for audience Q&A. And I believe Antonio and Michael will be bringing a mic around. Antonio, you've got a mic, right? So Antonio will be bringing a mic to you when we turn to the Q&A portion. And again, we'd love to hear from you. So with that, why don't we get going with our first session titled Microschools in Affluent Niche or Breaking Out. Our first panelist is Matthew Kramer. He's co-founder of Wildflower, which is a network of teacher-led microschools. We also have Shiren Rattigan. She's also joining us from Florida. She's founder of Colossal Academy, which is a microschool network that emphasizes entrepreneurial education. And then finally, we have Ashley Soifer. She's Chief Innovation Officer at the National Microschooling Center. And she's going to present her organization's latest research in this area. And that's also one of the things we've added into the sessions this year is some empirical research that's currently being done out there on some of these really new areas where there really isn't a lot of research. So excited to have all the panelists, and maybe Matthew, if you'd get us started, that'd be great.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt, and I lead Wildflower Schools. It's a network of 61 tiny teacher-led, community-embedded Montessori microschools serving a diverse group of families across 16 states, in Washington, D.C., and about 1,300 kids or so right now. Quickly about me, I'm from New York, but I spent most of my life in Minneapolis. I'm a Montessori kid. My actual pathway through the traditional schools didn't go very well at first. I can't sit still, and the traditional school I went to at the beginning responded to that by having me miss recess every day, and after a couple of years, we were headed down a bad path. Fortunately, I ended up in a Montessori school, and until high school, that worked quite well. I'm a dad. My wife and I and our 2 daughters live in Minneapolis, and both of my kids have gone to Montessori schools through 8th grade. Wildflower started about 10 years ago now, almost 10 years ago now. It started when a professor at MIT at the Media Lab, a guy named Sept, who like me was a Montessori kid, was looking around for the school for his 2-year-old son, and didn't see the thing that he most wanted in the world. He visited a lot of Montessori schools, and there was one thing or another that wasn't exactly what he was looking for. And after thinking about it for a time, Sept decided to create his own school. Sept has about as much privilege in the world as a person could have. He made a lot of money as an entrepreneur at a very young age. Google bought his company. He became one of the senior people at Google, made a lot of money a second time, became a professor at MIT, headed up one of the labs at the Media Lab when he was 35, is an artist, has 2 pieces in the permanent collection of the MoMA. He's a special character. And so when he had the thought of I should create my own school, he just sort of marched on and did that. He found 2 Montessori teachers. to work with two spectacular women who were veterans and administrative experience, and they created this little school. And I note that because the journey he went on is not really available to most people. Most people, when they run into that sort of problem, they have a different set of choices and options available to them. A lot of people, you know, my wife and I think back on our school choices for our kids, and we sent our kids to Montessori at every juncture, but that sort of can paper over all the complexities of what you might look for in a school. For us, we started our kids at a private Montessori school. It wasn't very diverse. We didn't feel like it was the right spiritual environment that we were looking for. We switched them to a public Montessori school that had pros and cons to it. We did that for 6 years until it ran out of grades. And then we switched back to a private school to continue in junior high. Everywhere along the way there were like hard choices that we had to make to figure it out. And for us, we felt like we had all of these ways of navigating that situation. And since then, I've had the chance to watch lots of other people navigate this, friends, colleagues, people who are sending their kids to Wildflower schools. And my observation is, as people go through this sort of journey, that there's a lot of consistency in what parents want in a school at the level of things like, I want a school that is safe physically and psychologically for my kids. I want a school that's nurturing. I want a school that sees them as an individual, that recognizes the things that are true for them, that are unique, that recognizes the path through the world, their path through the world is going to be their own, and respects that and tries to support it. A place that challenges them, brings them out of their comfort zone in developmentally appropriate ways to help them see the world, the broader world around them. These are pretty common thoughts expressed by parents, either directly or indirectly. But exactly what that means for every kid is different. And so when you know, because kids are different. So when you get to the details of like what this looks like for a particular kid, parents actually end up wanting quite a few different things. Parents is, whether there are Montessori schools around or not, most parents find that the thing that they really envision for their kid isn't out there. And I've experienced that people respond to this in different ways. Sometimes, you know, some people, I would say consciously or unconsciously, don't admit to themselves that there's this disconnect. They rationalize the situation. It's pretty good. It's good enough. It's as good as schools are going to be. Some people know that it's not right and are frustrated, but they don't sense any reasonable option available to them. And they live with that ongoing nagging sense that there's something they should be doing for their kid that they're not quite doing. Some people see that situation and think I should go solve this problem. I should start school. My experience is that those people, when they're parents and not educators, often as they go through the experience of trying to do this, which as I described before, challenging, as they go through this experience, parents often have this like sort of dual track set of thoughts in their mind. One track saying like, I'd do anything for my kids. And I can't find the thing that's right for them. I'm going to do anything for them. And then this like other little voice in their head that says, I don't think I'm meant to be an educator. I'm doing this out of necessity, not because I was called to teach. And sometimes people deal with that thought well into the process of having created a school and leading it for years. Sometimes people last many, many years with that. But I think my experience is that most parents, despite all these feelings they have about the imperfect fits that their kids have, don't really want to solve the problem by creating a school. What they really want is a school that's all those things that I said before, plus listens to them, respects them, involves them, but also at the end of the day sends them home and takes care of the kid during the day. And at Wildflower, that's sort of the idea that we're focused on, is how do we help educators, people who do feel a calling to be, in our case, a Montessori teacher, a leader of a child-centered educational environment. How do we help people like that face the situation of, I'd like to create my own school, but it's kind of overwhelming and I'm not going to do it. How do we help those people through that? When we talk to Montessorians, you know, we spend a lot of time with Montessorians working in lots of different environments. When we talk to them about this challenge of you know, why don't you just go out and do this? We hear four main things from folks. The first thing we hear from people is they know somebody who once tried to start a school, and it was incredibly hard work. And actually it ended up recreating a lot of the problems that they saw in the school that they were at beforehand. Like, it was hard to have their old school be diverse. They wanted to go create a diverse school, and they found out the underlying funding streams were the problem, and it's hard to create a diverse school. Or they didn't like the difference between management and teachers, and then they were management, and the same problems recreated themselves. So that's one thing we hear. Second thing we hear is they don't know how to do it. Third thing we hear is it seems very expensive, and they haven't the first idea where they would get the kind of money it takes, especially if their vision involves having a building. And then the fourth thing they say, and I think this is an important one, is even if they don't like the school environment that they're in, even if they think their principal is a total bum, which happens, they have friends at the school and among the faculty, and the prospect of going off to start their own school seems incredibly lonely. And so Wildflower largely emerged as a solution to these problems, to lay out clearly for people who are entrepreneurial-minded Montessorians what the pathway to starting your own school is, to put them in an environment. In the Montessori world, we have kids in mixed-age classrooms, so the 3-year-olds can look up to 5-year-olds and see how to do things. We create an environment in which the model of success is clear. You can see other people doing it, and you can get the details of that. We bring together all sorts of money for them. We bring together grants for them and low interest loans for them, lease guarantees, mortgage guarantees, all sorts of things that are basic financial tools needed to do a thing like this that teachers, most of them, this is pretty out of their comfort zone to find. And then last is we put them in a community. We put them in a space, build their school together. We have them pair up with other people and do it as a team. We have the teams pair up into cohorts to build schools at the same time, so they learn from each other and they can lean on each other. We put them in these groups that we call pods of 5 or 6 schools that they're non-hierarchically related to each other, but they share notes with each other and they learn from each other, and they they share problems with each other. And that environment largely democratizes the capacity. So you don't have to be Sept to go through the process and end up with a Montessori school. Last thing I'll say is, in the spirit of this particular topic that the title of this session that we're in, about whether it's an affluent niche, I think part of the answer about whether this can break away from being a niche is about helping a broader set of people become Montessori teachers, teachers. Part of it is about what they do once they become those teachers. And our experience is that the underlying instincts people have when they're able to set aside a variety of practical considerations that might draw them in problematic directions, that people really do want wholesome, holistic, diverse school environments for both as teachers and as parents and kids. There's a lot of reasons that make that complicated, but that deep down, that is what people want in our experience. And so when we create an environment where the teachers can have their full vision, where they cannot feel like they are locked into some world that somebody else created for them, and they're constantly defending the policies they didn't create, they don't make sense, and all these other things like that, when they're able to connect and when they're able to listen to the small voices in their head, they do things differently. And as a result, what you see at Wildflower over the course of the last decade is that the number of kids who are low income, which was at around 20% back in the first couple schools, is now 40%. And the number of kids of color is 60%. And the number of teachers of color creating schools today is 70%. And more than half of all the schools, or about half of all the led by teachers of color. And these are partly a reflection of intentional efforts on our part and our beliefs about the world, but partly they're a reflection of a return to a state of nature in the environment of just disconnecting people from the things that tend to lead them to the homogenized, treat all the kids the same, only certain people can do this, only certain people fit, those types of thoughts. And our experience is it is beautiful. When you give people the opportunity to reconnect with those more central instincts, they find much more beautiful ways to express that in the world.
All right, Shiren.
Hello, my name is Shiren Rattigan. I just wanted to do a small poll and survey. How many educators, teachers do we have in the room? If you could raise your hand. Woo, there we go. How many school administrators? Policymakers? Investors? I'll talk to you after, but okay. So my name is Shiren Rattigan. I'm a 5th generation educator. My great-great-grandmother was a small farmhouse, one-room school teacher on a farm. My grandfather it was a superintendent of schools in Normal, Illinois. And my mother, a special ed teacher for over 30 years in a very, very low income district in Zion, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. And then I said, there's no way I'm doing this because I knew what it took to be a teacher. I knew that it took a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of effort, a tremendous amount of love, and your soul work goes into that. So people who are educators and administrators, you know that this is a sacred calling. What we do and what the avenue of the classroom being a vehicle for change of not only who we are as people, but also it's like a petri dish, right? Of what is going on in society, how we're gonna conflict resolute, how are we gonna deal with this problem, right? And that the classroom itself is really such a beautiful place. But I didn't want to necessarily go into education because I knew it came with a tremendous amount of sacrifice. I knew that I was going to not be paid very well. And I grew up with a truck driver dad who has a third grade education and a teacher. So I knew that I wanted a different, socioeconomic background. I wanted to have money for Christmas and holidays. So teaching was not the first thing on my list. As I continued on through my life, everything that always pivoted me back to education, right? Because when you grow up with teachers, everything's a teachable moment. And so I became an educator and I worked in the public school system. I gave my dues to the union. I believe firmly in the public education system. I think that we need to have a public education and an educated population. I think it's super and critical and important. But I'm 8 months pregnant, and I'm restraining a child on the floor because of an argument that had happened in first period. And now we're in 7th period and I'm supposed to be doing geometry. I had no idea something was going on in first period. And now it's coming to my classroom. I'm pregnant and holding this like 8th grade boy on the floor. And he's like flailing about. And I'm thinking, I can lose my child. I can get injured, but I could also lose my child. And this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for meaningful conversations. I've signed up for connection and lovingness in this beautiful, magical place of like whisking kids away to the place of knowledge, and that we would have this magical interaction. But instead it turned into, having my badge tagged and going through metal detectors at the school and restraining kids and holding kids back from lunch when they don't deserve that. So I left. Yeah, I was also one of those kids. So I'm highly dyslexic and ADHD. So I left and I went to international school. I thought, well, it must be different in the private sector, right? But it's the same. I'm still having to wear badges, having disconnection with my kids. I have 150 kids on my caseload. They're in and out of my classroom. I can't do the work that I'm supposed to do, let alone be Miss Frizzle that would like whisk these kids away to the digestive tract and learn about all these great things. So I went to Montessori. And what I found in Montessori, and I love Montessori for so many reasons, but I'm a middle school teacher. Are there any middle school teachers? Yes. All wild 5 of us. It is a different world in the 6 of us. It's a different world in the middle school. There are different needs in the adolescents. And I felt like we weren't tapping into the magic of a middle schooler. I know it sounds crazy for people who don't like adolescents, but the essence of a child and the possibilities and the magic of a child at that age is so beautiful. But I didn't find it in Montessori because Maria Montessori had passed before she could fully really develop her middle school. And I wanted things to be relevant. So has there ever been anybody in this room that has said, well, why didn't they teach us this in school? Or why are they teaching that? And I wanted to have a classroom where it made sense, where it was relevant. So pandemic hits and I get 4 families that are like, we're here, you're leaving. Will you take our kids? And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. So I get a bus because I'm Miss Frizzle and that's what I want to do. We started surfing and skateboarding on Fridays with an incredible organization called Surf Skate Science. I was actually able to have the ownership of my classroom. I literally owned it. I opened an LLC and I owned my classroom. I got such an incredible opportunity to be a VELA recipient, which they not only the funds, the funds are important, but the other half is the community that comes with it, and that you're not at a silo, right? You're not by yourself doing this incredibly important work. So we grew, we kept growing, and then people wanted to open their own school. So really, I'm at the stage right now of how do we do this in a way that is maintains integrity? How do we do this that it's going to be sustainable? And I'll be talking to you afterwards, Mr. Wildflower. And how do we continue to grow this in a way that it's going to be around for a very long time, right? That this is not something that just happened during COVID. I think were exposed to what education was at that really wonderful window that was open to what's beyond, when you drop your child off. And I think we were all kind of wondering, how do we do this differently? Many families went into homeschooling, people started microschools. So, our school, let me tell you a little bit about what that looks like. Everybody is self-directed at our school. So we do academics in the morning because we have to. But the other part is that everything is in context. Everything is relevant. When I find that students are trailing, it's because it's not relevant for them. Or if they're not interested in it, it's not relevant for them. So we're able to pivot curriculum whenever we need. We're able to pivot any kind of enrichment. They're doing chess this year. They wanted to do drones one year. We garden. We're in the communities that we're in. So we took over a vacant lot next door, and we have a food forest, we're in downtown Fort Lauderdale, in a historically Black and brown neighborhood, which is being gentrified. So we claimed a space, and we built a community garden. Well, not we, they built a community garden, and they found that they can feed the entire city block based off of what they've calculated based on what they're yielding. They are also doing things like getting a crosswalk so that they're able to go to the park without having to go all the way around the block, because they have to walk in crosswalks when they go. So they're enriched and engulfed in there, and that's how we learn government. So I'm like, okay, first we're gonna go to the Civic Association, guys. Next, we're gonna go talk to the cities. And so we get in the bus and we go and do the things. And the thing that became really apparent to me in the work that I'm doing is that the community is craving to have relationships with young people. They might not know how to do it. And that's what the program's here for, is to show you how to be a community educator and how to pour into young people. But young people are craving that elder learning relationship. But I also feel like the elders are learning that they have so much to learn from young people. An example of that is the Shopify. The Shopify shop that my students have started. All of our students leave, and the idea by the time that they graduate high school is that they are entrepreneurs and CEOs of their own company. So, you graduate on Sunday, but Monday's still a board meeting. You still have to go to work. And I really want that seamless transition instead of a 40-year-old crises of who am I going to be when I grow up, and rather you are that, right? That you're actually living who you are, and that it doesn't need to be some kind of existential crisis at some point. So that's, Colossal's kind of genesis where we are right now. We have a school in West Palm Beach. We have one in Miami as well. And we have just opened one, well, I haven't. Teachers have, I should rephrase that, in Mérida, Mexico as well. So we're international and we're national as well. So that's kind of our genesis. I'm excited to answer any questions and continue these conversations.
Thank you. Ashley?
First, I just want to say how lucky I feel to sit here at the table with these two amazing leaders. I was fortunate enough to be able to spend time at a few different Wildflowers, and I was very excited to see what was happening and meet those leaders. And then I got to spend time at Colossal. Not only did I get to spend time, but we show up and Shiren says, okay, great, brings my 3 kids in. We do a great tour, and then, she told me I could go, and the kids stayed, and it was great. We went to a coffee house across the street, and I looked out the window and saw them picking vegetables and making a salad out in the front. And for my middle kiddo, who's very shy and doesn't like to talk a lot, seeing him involved, and I think they were making butter, shaking the butter and doing this fun dance with the other kids. It was truly, feel silly saying it, but it was magical. It was so exciting as a parent to watch that happen. So I'm just super grateful to be able to sit up here with you two today. And I do have slides and I'm not sure how to make it start. I know how to skip through, but is there a way to get the slides up there? Thank you. So at the National Microschooling Center, we see the microschooling movement as a very diverse, growing, and welcoming movement. It truly is a place where all are welcome, and there are a variety of models where every child can find a place to thrive. EdChoice research will inform us that 1.1 to 2.1 million children use microschools as their primary source of education. Using that number, we at the center estimate that there are over 125,000 microschools nationwide. We see microschooling in 3 different tracks. So we see independent, partnership, and provider network microschools. And independent is what most people think of when they think of microschools. They think of that amazing educator stepping out of the classroom, or a parent that's frustrated and can't find a solution, or maybe somebody from a different career entirely that says, hey, I see a problem in my community and I want to step in and solve it. And they're opening up a microschool on their own, either in a storefront or in their home. Partnership microschools have a host partner that can be an employer, an association. We ran a project with the city of North Las Vegas. It can be a municipality, and they provide resources like a space. Maybe they have technology or an IT department, and they partner with a technical partner who oversees the teaching and learning. And then we see provider networks that are doing an amazing job of helping this movement to grow. Like Matt was saying, right? With parents sometimes that say, I need a solution and this is really scary to do on my own. And so Wildflower, KaiPod, Prenda, Acton Academy, they're all doing amazing things to help the microschooling movement grow and thrive. In April at the National Microschooling Center, we published our first sector analysis. So I'm going to talk a little bit about prospective microschool founders. If we look forward to where this movement is going, it's very important to hear from prospective microschool founders and what they're thinking. As you'll see, the top 2 main motivators of prospective microschool founders are opportunities to serve systemically underserved or marginalized communities and enable children to thrive as they had not had a chance to do in prior settings. Looking at anticipated funding sources for prospective microschool founders is really important, especially as we talk about, is this, an affluent niche? The majority of microschools anticipate tuition-based funding to be their primary source of funding. Thinking through with how that might look in the next year or a couple years as more states are developing school choice programs and bringing those, opening those up to hopefully microschools, right? It's important to allow microschools to access those funds without requiring them to change what makes them uniquely who they are. And we'll talk about that a little bit later and what that change could mean for some microschools. Prospective microschool founders, what do they consider for facilities? So this graph will show us that 28% are planning to use commercial business space. When we published this back in April, 27% were uncertain. And that uncertainty comes from trying to find a great location at a really great cost, right? How can they find a low cost facility so that they can keep tuition low for their families? Again, this is where the partnership microschooling can be incredibly appealing if there is an employer with empty space at their facility to offer a microschool founder. And what are prospective microschool founders seeking help with? When they reach out to the National Microschooling Center, the top 2 areas that prospective microschool founders need help with are governance and organizing and understanding statutory and regulatory frameworks. And I think that does not need any more explanation. We all know how difficult it can be to figure out how you can operate within the constraints and barriers. So it's a little bit, we're gonna move through some of this information kind of quickly. That's a little bit about the prospective microschool founders, but let's take a look at some microschools that are open and the children that they serve. This is Bloom Academy, located in Las Vegas, Nevada. 53% of children at Bloom are receiving financial assistance. When we say that 53% of those students are receiving financial assistance, they're receiving financial assistance from Bloom Academy. In Nevada, there is not a school choice program that allows funds to follow a child to a setting like Bloom. So this is Sarah and Yamila, the founders of Bloom, going out and holding a benefit concert to raise $10,000 so they can offer scholarships. It's applying to grant after grant after grant to try to raise funds for their kids so that they can serve the children that they truly want to serve. And I think it's important to look at one area of focus that they have is to help children heal from hardships that they're currently facing, whether it's anxiety, depression, insecurities, and trauma. These microschools that we're going to take a look at on the next couple of slides, they represent a sample across the nation. And you'll see a lot of similarities. Each model is so different. You'll see a lot of similarities about the children that they serve. Super excited about El Mercito Academy that we have founders Lizette and Oscar here. I love seeing their friendly faces as I look out. They are doing incredible work in Southgate, an urban city in Los Angeles County. You can see their diverse student population. 45% of their students are Hispanic. Something that you can also see that is quite common among microschools is that they serve a neurodivergent community. 50% of their children have ADHD, over 30% have autism. And again, we go back to different traumas, right? 25% of their students are current and former foster youth, 75% emotionally fragile, and 5% medically fragile. As we're talking about, is this breaking out or is this for a niche population? I think we can see that microschools are serving a wide variety of population. And let's take a look at Streams of Hope Christian School in Fort Wayne, Indiana, led by the incredible Jill Haskins. 29% of Jill's private school students are low income, 24% receive financial aid, and 12% of students that attend this quite conservative Christian school identify as LGBTQ, and they feel welcomed and are happy to be at their micro school. And again, 33% of students are neurodivergent. And Vandalia Community School, led by Michael Parsons in Charleston, West Virginia. 54% of Michael's students are receiving financial aid in a complex ESA environment right now in West Virginia. And 62% of Michael's students are neurodivergent. You can see the breakdown there. So the next part is a little harder to talk about. We all love to talk about micro school wins. That's always exciting to hear about the new micro schools that are opening and the children that they're serving. It's also just as important to talk about the micro schools that didn't open or the micro schools that had to close so that we know the barriers that these founders are facing and how we can help to remove those barriers. Let's meet Tanya Kipe from Kipe Academy. Tanya's located in Polk City, Florida. She had an amazing location picked out. She had 40 families signed up, ready to go, excited to attend her micro school. She could not pass inspection because of her bathroom. She has a floor-to-ceiling bathroom, one person, not stalls, locking door. Her inspector requires her to have 2 bathrooms for her small micro school. Because of this, she could not open her doors. Those 40 families had to send their children back to a traditional public education, public school. I was talking to Tanya and she told me finding a place where we are in a rural area is difficult because there are not many places to choose from. The places that are available only have 1 bathroom. Next up is Alex from Capital Learning Academy, which was an incredible DC-based micro school. Alex was open for 3 years. Her 4th year, she had 70% low-income children signed up ready to attend. In order to make this work, she needed to be able to accept opportunity scholarships for this to be financially sustainable for her. She could not accept these scholarships unless she was accredited. She began the accreditation process, which she could not start until she had been open for 3 years. So she started the accreditation process, and the accrediting agency required her to have audited financial statements. Those audited financial statements cost her $15,000. Serving a small group of children, $15,000 is impossible. Unfortunately, she closed her doors, and Alex and I had a really tough conversation, and she told me, when I told the families, I had to be the strong one, feeling their anger and their disappointment. She had families that had been with her all 3 years that she had to look in the eye and tell them, I'm so sorry, I have to close my doors. Finally, last one, Melissa Flaxman. Melissa opened Future Makers in Las Vegas in 2020. She was serving children in historic downtown Las Vegas. She had an amazing micro school. It was so much fun to go visit. Zoning, business, and business license regulations forced her to close. She was in a retail area, and they added a change to her license, her business license, to put on an educational clause. This educational clause meant that she could only serve 3 children at a time for 3 hours a day. So she had to tell her families that she was closing her doors, and those families had to find an alternative. And this happened several years ago, and I was talking to Melissa recently, and she looked at me and said, I will never forget when they told me I had to close. So again, knowing these barriers, knowing what these amazing leaders are up against, we need to try to find a way to remove these barriers so that micro schools can thrive and children can have these opportunities. If you're interested in downloading the full report of our American Microschools, a sector analysis, feel free to scan the QR code. It's also available on our website. And as a microschooling parent and a former microschool founder, I am so grateful for the opportunity that I have to spend each of my days with amazing Microschool founders who I just started to see some of those friendly faces in the room of Microschool founders. So I just hope that they know the difference that they're truly making in the lives of the children and the families that they serve, because for my children, it's not only been life-changing, but for one particular child, it has also been life-saving.
So those were, thank you all. Those were outstanding presentations, and I know everybody in the room has a question to pose, so I will exploit my position and be the first. Should there be any regulation of this sector, or should it be completely unregulated? And then what do you do with a newspaper reporter if that's the case? So that maybe you could all comment briefly.
I'm not conceptually opposed to regulation, but most of the times when I encounter a regulation, it doesn't make sense. We have stories like the ones Ashley just told. In Philadelphia, in order to have the school like cut its own carrots for the kids for snack, you need to have a commercial grease trap in your kitchen. That knocked our school starting back 4 months there. There are, like the one bathroom, some states have a 3-bathroom rule. You need to have one for the adults, one for the boy kids, one for the girl kids. You have 14 kids, that's a lot of bathrooms. As I said, I'm open to the idea of regulation, but I do think that most of the ones I encounter don't make sense. And I would say the biggest thing that I encounter is regulation that is oriented around the idea that it is an unacceptable outcome for a school to fail. Which in my mind is not the worst thing that can happen. I think we see in the charter regulations, they're just designed to make it impossible for a school to go down. And I think it is much worse for the schools to be not very good for their kids. And I would tolerate an occasional failure, especially when we're talking about microschools, when they only have 25 kids, where the system around them can absorb 25 kids if a school fails. So I'd say that's like my biggest bugaboo on the regulation front is like, we just should get ourselves oriented around the idea that schools closing is part of the thing. And the smaller they are, the better it is for that purpose. And then we can be more respectful of parents' decisions with less regulatory interference of them. If we just accept that sometimes it'll go down, that's okay.
I think we're in an incredible moment of innovation. I want us to think back to the World's Fair in Chicago in the early 1900s. When we're in the moments of innovation, I don't think that having a lot of bureaucracy actually helps innovation. I think it gets in the way of innovating and ideating. Not that I'm opposed to it when we have some concrete models that are really going to be sustainable. I think at this current moment, though, the policy hasn't caught up with the innovation. So I have 1,163 square feet in my tiny little house of a school. I'm required to have a male bathroom, a female bathroom, and a teacher's bathroom. So I want you to imagine an apartment that's 1,000 square feet and having 3 bathrooms. It just doesn't match and it doesn't make sense. So I think while we're ideating and innovating, there needs to be a moment of reflection on how we can allow these models to surface. I think things were cracked open for a reason. And if we just go back to business as normal, we didn't capture that really the change that needs to happen. The last thing I'll say, I think that's yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you both. I think that the barriers that are there stand in the way of innovation. And we trust families, we trust kids, we believe in them to know what they need, and allowing parents to determine or families to determine what's best for their child's education and what setting a child can truly thrive in, whether that's something that looks and feels very conventional, or maybe it's a micro school that just rejects state academic content standards as even being relevant for the child's future. Parents should have that choice. And I don't think that regulatory barriers should stand in the way of these innovative models being able to open and operate and serve children in the way that they know is best.
So when we think about scale up and potential state policies that might support the scaling up of microschools. How do we know when they're working? What types of metrics should we be thinking about?
Go first.
Well, as a mother of three, how I make decisions are how joyful my children are. I know that's not the best and the most quantifiable thing. I think there definitely could be a way to measure that. But as a mother, I see when my child is happy and thriving. I know. And so my oldest is deaf and hard of hearing and autistic, and she was severely bullied at what is supposedly a deaf-informed public school with all of the services. So we pulled her, and her happiness significantly changed. With her happiness came her academic abilities and her openness to learn, to really start to grasp some of the skills that she wasn't able to have, like some flexible thinking, for instance. So that's one matrix. I know that's not an easy answer to how do you quantify joy. I don't know that answer. Also, the schools that are not serving families in the way families want to be involved in the education, they're leaving and they're failing. And that's part of how we're deciding if something's going to last, is parents are seeing they like what they're seeing and they're choosing to stay, or they're not. And if you don't have students or families or tuition coming in, then your model fails. I really think I was at SPN in Chicago. Carrie, you'll have to remind me who was the the speaker, but he's like, we're in the mosh pit right now. It's just madness, right? We're just in a whole bunch of chaos, and that's okay. I think we're going to start seeing the new ways that we need to measure. How are we going to measure in the 21st century using early 19th century measurements? It just, we're not even in 2036 is when kindergartners will graduate. Like, what are we setting them up for, and how are we measuring that? I don't know those answers. I think that's where innovation comes in, but we're ready to find it, and we're ready to do the work.
Related to that, I would say, I think you have to sort of separate public policy areas into two types. One where the metrics are like inarguably the objective of the thing. So for example, like when we are doing surgery, it is inarguably the objective of a surgery that the patient does not die. And other types of situations where the metrics are like loose proxies for clusters of objectives and they're imprecise. I think when we use the thinking that is designed around group one and apply it to group two, we do really messy things. The bottom line is there are no metrics that are good holistic evaluators of the quality of an education. People don't agree on the underlying thing. Quality of test scores going up is at best a loose proxy for a subset of the things we care about, and a gameable one at that. And in an environment where you don't have a clear measure, you do really bad things when you pretend you do. I mean, a related example to this is teacher licensure. When you pretend as if the number of hours that a person sits in a teacher licensing program is a highly predictive indicator of teacher quality, you do a bunch of bad things around limiting other people's access to the programs and narrowing the set of things that people can be trained to learn as educators. And it's not helpful. It's less than that. It's quite destructive. So I think that's my biggest thought is we should ask ourselves, what are the set of things where we are 100% sure that something is a good or a bad thing, and create some regulations at the margins that handle those things. And the rest of the time, we should be respectful of parents' choices.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point you made about group one and group two, right? And applying the same metrics. Parents want different things. Children need different things. I remember a school that I used to work at, you had to walk into a second grade classroom, and when you went next door to the next second grade classroom, it should look exactly the same as the one that you just walked out of. Those kids are not exactly the same. So if we're trying to apply some sort of blanket metric system to measure all kids and their success, I think that that's set up to fail. Parents, right? Families, what do they want? They're just like you were saying, they're going to go to the place that works for their child. And if it's not working, they're going to leave. And I think that's an incredible metric for success. And if something's working, and allowing new innovative micro schools the opportunity to create their own metrics based on their model, based on why they're open, based on why families are choosing them, and based on why, what their mission is and why they decided to do what they're doing.
All right, so we have quite a bit of time left for audience Q&A, and Antonio's going to be coming around with the mic. Maybe if you would just, raise your hand and he'll head on over to you. Yeah, Don? Anyway, microphone? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe we'll.
Here it comes.
Okay, there you go. Drew's there.
Thank you. First of all, for your presentation and for the great work you're doing. It was very inspirational to listen to. I saw on one of your charts that one of the top concerns was governance. And having been a school board member, I've seen what happens with unqualified governance. So my question is, with your microschool movements, how are you helping these entrepreneurs, education entrepreneurs, with governance?
Yeah, thank you. It's really about what each micro school founder wants to do, right? Again, it doesn't come back to there being a blanket answer, but talking through with them what they're looking to do. Do they want to be organized and as a 501c3? Do they want to be an LLC? Do they want to be organized as a licensed private school in their state? Should they open as a homeschooling arrangement? There's a lot of different questions to ask, and usually it's a process of we sit down and have a phone call and go over what they want to do, and we throw some ideas out and see what sounds interesting to them. But we provide free trainings as well. So at the National Microschooling Center, we do a variety of free trainings. We are a nonprofit, so we don't charge microschools for our help, and we're just there to support them and help them and answer questions that they have along the way.
I think governance is an important lever in the management of large and complex organizations. And for really small organizations, it's mostly about clipping off certain edge cases of people engaging in fraud and things like that. And microschools are so small that I think they mostly fit into that situation where governance is light on purpose. The person who is in front of the kids all day, the founder / administrator, principal, and teacher being the same person, you don't really have to manage much complexity other than making sure that person is not stealing or abusing kids. So as long as you're cutting off the edges, my thought is mostly you want to let that person listen to their own internal sense of what's right, and the parents' sense of what they should do, and the kids' sense of what they should do, and mostly not have the board get in the way of that.
Anybody else? Yep.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I'm Pradeep. I'm from India. I have joined here as a research fellow. A very interesting conference. So one thing that comes to my mind of what Paul asked about governance, these micro schools are facing several problems. What I find, they have different issues and all. What happens in India case, they have some organizations, registered societies, actually they go for strike and many other things to listen, to communicate with the government. There are different kind of school system, and those school system having their own registered societies, and they actually put their demands in front of the government through those registered societies. They sometimes go for strike and all that. So what happens in this case? Is it kind of allowed in that, forming some organizations and then raising your voice? That might be better, to communicate with the government or organize governance structure, because it's sometimes getting difficult to get an entry into your voice, taking your voice to others. But sometimes that happens in Indian case. So I was curious to know whether it is also the case to put your voice to the larger governance system.
Yeah, I think we're organizing around our needs so that we can go to Tallahassee in Florida. In the case of Florida, we can go to Tallahassee and say, hey, we really need to take a look at this bathroom issue. It's not serving, it doesn't make sense for 25 kids, right? For there to be, or 5 kids, for there to be 3 bathrooms, right? And so there is a relationship there of informing our public policy and drafting things just like any other organizations would do in their favor to make sure that what they need passes and becomes, in practice for us. In Florida, we have access to ESA, which is an educational savings account. It is universal now. It started off as low income and neurodivergent students, and now it's been passed in July of, what year are we in? 2023, as a universal, that any child, that the money would follow the child into whatever the family would feel fit. And that took a tremendous amount of effort from microschools, homeschooling moms, private schools, and it becomes a space of non-competition, non-political work. And in any other place, I find things tend to be leaning to one side or the other, but something about this educational shift has crossed party lines in a way that we're all understanding it needs to be different. It needs to be different for the Hasidic community, and they are also looking for the same answers as a Colossal Academy. We all need space differentiations. We all need access to funding to be sustainable. You know, so we have that relationship with. I was knocking on every single door. I didn't know much about policy in Tallahassee until it became really important and relevant for me and the students and the families that I serve. So it's out of necessity that we have to be involved in the politics, even though it's not a place I like to live in very often.
If I could just add to that really quick, I think you made a fabulous point about the different communities coming together for the same thing, right? And it is kind of crossing those barriers. But really making sure that it's the voice of the microschool founders and the voice of the parents being heard. There are a lot of great, well-intentioned people out there that want to make a difference and help, but really understanding what the problems are before you step in and help is crucial. And yeah, I love to share the story about a microschooling fair in Las Vegas where we had an incredibly conservative microschool founder sit down next to a new microschool that just opened this year that is specifically for kiddos in the LGBTQ plus community. And they sat next to each other and discussed, hey, my program might not be right for your families and your program isn't right for my families, but we are here for each other and we agree that we each have a place here and we each hold value. And so uniting those voices is incredible.
My question is, what portion of microschools are able to serve high school age students? And are there any unique challenges that education entrepreneurs face when attempting to cater to this age demographic?
Definitely seat time, what's quantified as a credit. These are all kind of archaic ways to quantify what we're doing right now. There's so much biology in the gardening that we're doing, and I can't quantify that into a credit for students. Mastery, transcript consortium, say the word. Consortium is doing a really great job at trying to quantify these experiential learning opportunities that we have into high school credits that students could have. Ideally, though, I don't know that every single child is meant to go to a university. I think the trades are really so important. And then, you know, Colossal students go into entrepreneurship. So their capstone project is really, I have an 11-year-old who has a full bath bomb business. She has her own domain. She's decided she's no longer doing retail. She's only doing wholesale from now on. She has her own sticker line that she has a full business and she has hired one employee. So my students, and she's 11, my students their trajectory is not to go maybe a university for some micro credentialing, but to be participating in the academy in the knowledge production. And I don't know that is where their trajectory necessarily is. You know, where we're going to be moving is into having like a sustainable business. Like they're going to be, you know, looking for venture capital or deciding if they want to be a nonprofit by the time they're 15, and then really taking on that business. But yes, high school is a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, let's go to Kelly.
Yeah. Quick question about cost. How much do these things cost and which direction is it going and why?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Jump in.
You know,
Per kid, you mean? Ranges from us for I mean, obviously a lot of kids pay nothing. But the average cost, whether it's born through a charter or ESAs or tuition, is from in Puerto Rico, like $3,500 to in Cambridge up to like $25,000, and San Francisco up $35,000. Other than the 3 or 4 most expensive real estate markets in the country, I would say 10 to 12 is pretty typical.
Is the expense, I mean, when you think about, one critique I've heard of Microschools is that they can be, when you think about all the classroom resources, the facilities that are needed, that people have said, well, doesn't that make them really inefficient and ultimately expensive? So how do you respond to critiques like that?
So in our case, the reason why they cost what they cost is because we design them to pay the teachers really well. In a place like Cambridge, the Wildflower teachers of schools that have been open for more than a few years are making $90,000 or $100,000. In Minneapolis, they're making $65,000, $70,000, designed to be considerably more than they would get paid in other settings. To the question of like what the underlying costs are, we don't have very many costs. These are very small, very simple businesses. A typical school has got like, the 2 teachers and maybe somebody who's like an after-school coordinator and 25 kids and a rent on a 2,500 square foot space, plus a little insurance and a few other little things like that. All the things that are actually costly in regular schools, a lot of them go away when the schools get small enough. We don't have all the shared space. I read a study somewhere that said 50% of all the square footage in New York City public schools isn't in classrooms. We don't have any square footage that isn't in classrooms. And similarly, that the number of employees in New York City public schools is like a multiple of the number of teachers. And we don't have very many people who aren't teachers. So, I think there's like there's costs that are higher in a microschool setting, but probably there's more costs that are lower.
Yeah, and I think for some of the costs where you need to have kind of that bulk buying power, Microschool founders uniting together for that can be really helpful. One of the things that we do at the National Microschooling Center is negotiate contracts with learning tool providers who have not been able to make their learning tools like Lexia, ST Math, things like that available to Microschool founders because they're used to working with large districts and they require that bulk license purchase. But if you get enough Microschool founders together that all want to use the same learning tools, then you're able to purchase that, and we're able to allow the microschools to just take what they need instead of having 1,000 licenses when they're only using maybe 10.
I also wanted to, at our district, Broward County is spending $18,500 per pupil. That's instructional and non-instructional time. My Colossal in the same in Broward district is $14,500. We don't have a lot of redundancies, like you were saying, Matthew. And we'll buy one drone. The whole district doesn't have to buy drones, and every single STEM class has to do drones. On the district level, oftentimes they'll make a decision. First of all, if I wanted drones, I'd have to go through a crazy amount of work to do it and advocate for it. The students leave, then I get drones and the kids are not interested. And then not only are the kids not interested, but everybody in 8th grade STEM has to do drones now, and it becomes irrelevant. And we spent a lot of money. Also, the security measures that happen in the district level of needing an armed guard. This is, Broward County. I don't fall under the same restrictions. A lot of the safety measures as far as fencing, the paints, the bathrooms not having glass. I mean, like there's a lot of money that goes to a lot of private industry that comes from the district. You don't call the district handyman in Florida for arranging anything. It's not insular. It goes out of the district into many private hands.
Yeah. Let's go to the front and then we'll go to the head of the back.
Hi, thank you for your time in the presentation. I guess I have a bigger kind of system culture question. I think a lot about like cable TV, individual discrete channels, and I think about technology, digital technology, individual discrete spaces. And so I think about the civic forum. I think about as more and more families make more and more choices that are smaller and smaller. How do you think about that as far as civic engagement? How do you think about that as a public forum? How do you think about that kind of in the big picture of people interacting rather than separating?
We're working with the city of Hollywood on October 14th for a cardboard boat race. And this wouldn't happen if I were 150 students on my roster, but I'm working with 5 other micro schools and we're meeting at this meeting place, at this watering hole, drastically different, wildly different micro schools. And somehow we're able to meet in the community that I don't think would happen in a regular school. I feel like in the middle school ages, people start to form these outside groups, but also within our culture and community of the classroom, fires can actually be put out in a way that can't happen in larger schools. Again, I'm middle, so kids move from class to class to class and things don't get resolved from first period to 8th period. And we're able to do that kind of conflict resolution in a smaller group. And then they have a responsibility to the communities that they're in. And the community actually has a responsibility to the youth. So it's a relationship that's happening that I couldn't do. I was not able to do because of the numbers. I can take 20 kids on a trip. I can't take 150 kids. That's a whole, and I could do this regularly all the time. We're on a field Friday, whereas I could do maybe 1 field trip in the year when I was at a district school, and how relevant and important it is. So we stopped to get gas. Their favorite thing is to stop at the gas station, and every time the manager gives them Slurpees. And like, what is that relationship and what are they building there? Because that brings joy to him as much as it brings joy to the children. And now they have a relationship in a way at a normal time of the day, right? At this time of day. Not only that, but my kids are generally low income. And when they walk into the gas station, they may be followed, they may be tracked. And now we're breaking that idea of what a teenager actually is, and how youthful and joyful they are. And so I think it brings some humanity back to the teenagers, and especially my Black and brown kids. It's bringing some humanity back into who they are. And so there's a strong relationship between society and the classroom in this way. And when you stay small, you can do that kind of engagement.
I worry about this. I worry about it more generally in society, about the sort of dissolution of the fabric that ties us together. I don't think the strategy of forcing people to send their children to schools that don't reflect what they want has worked very well for fighting against that. And I don't think it's going to work very well in the future. I think in integration, segregation plans, we've seen the way that sort of like the public reacts and squirms its way out of every district integration plan that's ever been created. And I think what is interesting is you could read into that people don't want to be near each other across racial lines or socioeconomic lines. But our experience at Wildflower is not that at all. We're inviting people into spaces that are designed to be intentionally serving a diverse group of people. And people of all sorts of backgrounds voluntarily show up for these environments. And I think I guess that's my hypothesis about what to do about this, is instead of lamenting the thing that we lost, as if the coercion strategy could help us bring it back, what we should do is ask ourselves, what invitations can we offer to create a new public square? And I think your story is a great example of that. I think there's a lot of answers that we would come up with if we could focus on that instead of just focusing on the thing we wish worked but didn't.
In the back, yeah.
Yeah, Ashley, that was amazing. Thank you for all of the data and research on that.
You
So
wanna
I'm
just
Jamie, I'm from
identify
West.
yourself? We should ask people to identify themselves. So
I was getting ready to, so thank you. So I'm Jamie from West Virginia, and I run the West Virginia FEW, Families United for Education. And over the last 2 years, we've supported 17 programs in their launch, everything from co-ops to hybrid programs to micro schools to private schools. But of course, in West Virginia, we aren't necessarily like a highly populated society of educators, right? So like I have no higher education. I just graduated high school, but I've homeschooled for 16 years and have graduated 2 children out of my homeschool, and I still have 2 coming up. But I'm curious if there are any national conversations happening about who is starting these programs. And, of course, we're seeing a lot of credentialed teachers, certified teachers starting these programs, but are you identifying anyone else like me who may be launching these programs that isn't necessarily a certified teacher or doesn't necessarily have any higher education in their background?
Yeah, definitely. So that's something that we see. when we did our sector analysis at the time in April, we asked the question, is the lead instructor or founder a currently or formerly licensed educator? And at the time, 70% said yes, 30% said no. But then when we look at the prospective microschool founders, that number is changing. Prospective microschool founders, 52% were professionally licensed educators, and 37 were professional in a non-education field. We've got 7% that were professional educators but unlicensed, and then 3% that were other. So yeah, absolutely. I think that the movement is definitely getting a little more diverse in the background of who's launching microschools and who are the lead educators at the microschools. A lot of the microschools that we work with really rely on community experts, right? There's an amazing microschool. I'm super excited. It's one that my daughter attends. She's a freshman this year, and it's a new microschool that just launched. She brings in community experts every week to teach master classes. It's an arts integrated micro school. So she's got a fabulous singer coming in on Friday to talk about public presence and public speaking and all of those things. There's a kiddo there that's really interested in engineering, and she has somebody from the Cirque show that will be coming in that designs their sets. So really relying on experts in the field to come in and share their expertise has been something that a lot of micro school founders do.
All right, we have time for one more quick question, and then I think we have to wrap.
Indeed, very quick. And Ilana from Pennsylvania. A very inspiring presentation by all of you. Just what you said now, quoting data, I'm very curious, what's the source of this data? Where you get all those numbers, all these percentages? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So our data comes from Microschool Founders Perspective and Current. We interviewed 100 of each, so that's where our data comes from. The Vela team is here. Michael has amazing research that he would love to, I'm sure, be able to talk with you if you were interested. But they also did a report, and guys, I'm sorry, on the Vela team, I can't remember how many microschools responded or how many entrepreneur educated. Thank you, over 400. So yeah, it's can be a little difficult to gather the data. Sometimes a lot of the microschool founders stay under the radar on purpose, right? I mean, when you drive through Las Vegas, you won't, Bloom Academy that we talked about, if you show up to Bloom, they don't have a sign on the outside of their door, because there have been times we had to bring in an attorney who works up for us pro bono to represent microschools that are finding themselves in harm's way due to a regulator, an overzealous regulator sitting in the driveway and counting noses. So a lot of microschools choose to stay under the radar to protect what they're doing and the families that they're serving. But as comfort level grows and increases, more and more data will be available as more folks are willing and excited to talk about what they're doing.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you all for the first. Take a 15-minute break. We're going to try to keep right on time throughout the conference. So be back in 15 minutes.